shortly is testing to see if we have the syrup, it's maple syrup yet. You can test using a hydrometer on here where there's two red marks. One, the lower one is for testing when the syrup is cold. The top one is testing when it's hot. And we just pour off some syrup into this cup and then we drop it in and we measure it. It's surprising that there's lead at the bottom, that this thing is actually will float.
When it floats is when it's ready to come off and when it's completed.
When it floats and the syrup is at that red line there, then it's syrup. It's ready to be taken off. When we're ready to cook the sap down to the syrup, the tanks are outside the building here. The sap flows through this tubing here into this float box, and what the float box does, it allows me to maintain a constant level of sap and syrup in the evaporator itself. You can see right here that the float is actually letting some sap in from outside to maintain that level. Once it's in here, when the pan is looking for sap and that stuff, it'll flow from here into this first pan here, which has a divider on it. As we're boiling off the water in the steam, the sap starts to condense and starts to move just by itself along this side of the pan. And down here in the divider, there's a hole. Then as it condenses more, it goes onto that side of the pan and starts moving up that to that front of the pan. Here, it'll go through this tube into this front pan. Again, this pan is divided in half. So it's starting to boil here. You can see that we like to see those little bubbles like that versus the bubbles back there. That this means it's getting closer to being syrup. As it's getting more condensed, it goes down and comes through this divider here onto this side here, where we're able to pour off once it gets to be syrup. We're also looking at this gauge here. Once it gets up to that 7, we're getting really close now to it being syrup and ready to pour off. And right now you can see that the red line is above the level in there, so we're ready to pour off some of this syrup.
Adding the filter aid.
Any impurities or any dirt or anything that possibly is cooking it in here is in the syrup. It'll attach that filter aid and it'll help us filter out those things. This is a vacuum filter. We're going to pour this syrup in here in the top. There's filters here. They'll collect any of those impurities, anything in there. The vacuum is to help pull the syrup into this bottom container.
That's basically about it for the bottling process. I just wanted to touch on something real quick. These are 2 jars of syrup, finished syrup, that we've completed this year. The difference in the color is dictated from the amount of sugar and the length of time that the sap was boiled down during the cooking process. So essentially, the less sugar and the shorter time that you boil the sap, the lighter color you'll get. The more sugar in the sap and the longer it takes you to cook it down, or the more time that you leave it on the cooker, the darker it'll be. Right away off the bat, you may not notice a difference in taste, but I have definitely noticed a major difference in the flavor of when it gets lighter and darker. Personally, I like the darker flavor compared to the lighter, but that's just personal preference. And again, some people can't tell a difference. But you can even tell the difference in consistency, right? The lighter stuff is going to be more fluid and liquidy, and the darker colored stuff is going to be more thick. Well, that concludes our 3-part video series of maple syrup making here on the farm. I'm glad we can keep on carrying on this tradition that the family's been doing for many generations. All the credit goes to Mom and Dad. They're the ones that have been doing this day in and day out, and they're the ones out there collecting the buckets, cooking everything down, making sure all the equipment is running good. I'm just a monkey on a camera. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, God bless.
Daddy?
And Godspeed.